Hey, welcome back to Momentum Mode. I'm your co-host, Mike Shannon, joined by my co-host, Corey Farringle. Are we saying hellos at this point, Corey, or are we just
I don't
introducing
know.
ourselves?
But though you're so damn busy,
This is
I
the
don't see
R&D.
you anymore. So, I got to say hello just because I got a mic sighting.
That's right. Yeah, we start with Corey and I just catching up, and then we get to our special guest. No, we'll get right to our special guest. So today we're joined by Morgan Bell, who's managing director of advisory at Constellation Wealth Capital, growth capital and strategic advisory firm in the wealth management space. And so we're going to have an AI in wealth management type conversation, and we'll get to all of that. But Morgan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This'll be a fun one. Our paths have crossed as we're both in
couple
this wealth management space, AI, everything. And so this will be a fun one. And obviously, Corey and I have been on a kicker of AI.
We're the only people. Nobody else is covering the topic.
Yeah.
Just us.
Right. Yeah, it's a unique niche. Well, let's jump right in. So, Morgan, if you can tell us a little bit about your role at Constellation Wealth Capital and what it looks like to work with firms you invest with as a minority partner, just so our broader audience kind of can understand the stage.
Understand. Absolutely. So Constellation Wealth Capital is a private equity firm. We are headquartered in Chicago, and we make minority investments in RIA firms specifically. And so what this looks like in practice is across our 15, we call them partner firms today, portfolio companies. We'll talk more about some of the specific work that we do. But on average, our partner firms are anywhere from 5 to 20 billion AUM, a couple on the smaller side, closer to 2 billion, a couple on the larger side, upwards of 100 billion. So really looking at those larger, growth-oriented, independent wealth management firms that we can invest in to help them continue the growth trajectory that they are already well on pace to exceed in the coming years. So one of the biggest differentiators in terms of the firms that we get to work with in being a minority investor is that they get to not only maintain their independence, but they also get access to the strategic advisory team. And so that's the team that I sit on at Constellation today. It is a team of 7 of us, and we come in after the capital has been deployed to really help our partner firms set and achieve their strategic growth objectives. And we'll get into what that looks like in terms of technology specifically. That's where I spend the majority of my time and how I've gotten to know you. But really, we meet the team where they are to understand what they want to do, not only today, but 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 8 years down the road, and help them achieve that.
Yeah, very cool. And a team of 7. I mean, that's not a small bench of talent for a firm that, may not have had that type of support before. Like all of a sudden you're in the big leagues. Well, I mean, hey, it is. I've run small startups, and then all of a sudden when you get the capital partner that has resources, it changes the game. Now, let me ask you this. So another unique thing there is that long-term orientation that you spoke to. I'm curious how the long-term orientation perspective, maybe changes or drives the kind of, say, technology, advice, and support you give across the portfolio.
Yeah. And I'll speak mostly to technology for the purpose of today. That's how I spend the vast majority of my time and what I often focus on with our partner firms. What's a bit
It's too bad
unique
Corey and
about-
I are not interested in technology.
Yeah, that
Corey, try to
niche
stay
AI.
awake.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But what's really interesting about the team is that our whole team has worked at, in, or for RIA firms for the entirety of their careers. So across the 7 of us, there's deep sector expertise. I started my career as an advisor at an RIA firm. We have others that have worked throughout the entire firm, where they started at an entry-level job and ended up as COO of the firm. And so deep sector level expertise where we're coming in and making recommendations based on what we've actually seen work. And so similar to how we've invested our careers for the long term in organizations like this, now when we're working with them, what I really love about this job is that we get to advise firms to do not necessarily the fun or the fast thing, but sometimes the hard or the right thing. And we're there to see it through to the end. So it's not that we really need to make numbers look really good and cut people and make
Right, right,
margins look good in 3 to 5 years. We're really there for the long haul. And so oftentimes what that means is investing in the business on the front end. And we like to tell a funny story of one of our first partner firms that said, "Oh my gosh, you guys are telling me to spend so much money at the offset. I'm so uncomfortable." And we're like, "You're building the building
right.
blocks of this business that are going to unlock the growth potential for you all for the next number of years." So that's really the biggest change when it comes to technology and what that looks like. We can encourage them to invest in it. When it comes to what we're going to spend some time talking about today with AI, I think it really means that a lot of the conversations we're having with our partner firms today is investing in the data foundation. And
Sure.
this isn't something that can necessarily be done overnight, but those firms that do so will be tremendously ahead of those that do not have the opportunity or don't have the time horizon to be able to.
So
Sure.
you tell the story about, uncomfortable spending the money. Typically, these are independents, right? So they're on their own, and this is their money they were spending before. And it's not to say they're
Very
not
much
making
so.
money now, but it's like, wow, how tech savvy are these groups generically, not specific groups? But when you
Yeah.
get in, are they very tech savvy, or is it just, you know, you're the first real tech people they've worked with?
It depends on the firm. So, as every good consultant and strategic advisory person can tell you, but for some of the larger firms that we work with, they have dedicated technology teams with
Okay.
data analysts and developers and are very sophisticated in terms of the technology. We have one partner firm that has built their own proprietary technology. And so, as you can imagine, deep expertise in terms of technical knowledge.
Yep.
We have others that are using third party vendors and have contracted with them for the entirety of the firm. And that's another great solution set, but obviously a very different level of expertise in terms of actual technical development. And so that certainly changes the conversation that we have and the recommendations that we make in terms of what the next 3 to 5 years will look like with technology.
And so you got to walk in and first assess what's their technology
Oh, yeah.
savvy and what do they have here and what's this environment, right? How long does it take you to get your arms around it?
Fortunately, we learned some of that during the due diligence
Okay.
process, right? So we have a pretty good feeling. And historically, I'll say the independent wealth management space, we like to think we're very technologically forward. We are still ages behind many others and have a long way to go. But in terms of what we typically know what we're walking into with these firms. However, there are some standard things that we do as we start working together in terms of understanding what vendors they're using today, how they're using their vendors. But much more so, and we can talk more about this if you think it would be of interest, it's much less of, hey, which vendors are you selecting?
Yep.
Because they've already done that. They're at a stage in their life cycle where they've invested in technology. They're able to make more thoughtful decisions for strategic growth related to
Right.
tech. And so it's much more around optimization and what's coming and how they'll be able to take advantage of that.
Well, and on the point to give credit to the industry, and obviously I'm in this space, improve. There's all sorts of custom AI work for wealth management firms. It's a highly regulated space, right? So when you say in some cases can be ages behind, it's like that's for real reasons that, Corey and I have talked about for other fields of, service businesses and sectors. So, that's, I think in some ways can be a nice luxury where you can watch the industries
Yeah.
that might be experimenting at the bleeding edge, right? And making some mistakes, which gets me to a question I'm curious about for you, Morgan, in terms of, maybe if we cut through the AI hype and everything, which Corey and I have done on a recent episode too, like where do you see firms, meaning your partner RIA firms, finding, what I'd call real measurable traction on just
Yeah.
their tech initiatives, period, whether it's AI or otherwise? And I'm curious if you've seen, cycles burnt through on initiatives that didn't pan out.
I think the biggest place that we're seeing it today, let's speak to AI specifically, and then we can back up and talk
Yeah,
more broadly
cool.
too. Where it's working today is not the glamorous stuff yet. I think that's
Yep.
still what's coming. But where it's working today is still really meaningful for people inside these firms. And so we're talking meeting prep, where it used to take advisors 45 minutes to an hour to prep for every meeting. And now it's taking 5 to 10 minutes
Right.
because of some of the solutions that they have in place that can synthesize all their past meeting history identify an agenda and what the client wants to talk about. So, really consolidating the time that it takes for meeting prep as well as meeting
Yep.
follow up, which for us is really valuable because oftentimes what we see is that that capacity goes back into spending time with the clients. And that's where advisors' time is best spent. It's not best spent prepping for meetings. Although
Right.
unglamorous, that's one place we're seeing it. We're also seeing a number of our partner firms use AI in terms of research. So, whether that's due diligence on investments or agentic monitoring on portfolios or some of the data analytics behind those research capabilities, that's another team or opportunity where we've seen, again, maybe a little bit unglamorous, but real uplift in terms of productivity. And then we have others that are doing some content creation, and that can look different depending on the firm. But that's the third piece where we're really seeing that today. Within these businesses, there's not often huge ops armies that could
Right.
potentially go away with
Right.
AI,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
The capacity that we have is finite advisor time and capacity. And so I think AI raises the ceiling for where we can go with this, whether it's giving advisors back their time or allowing them to operate with clients in more meaningful ways. So, yes, that's kind of where it's working. I think the real opportunity is what's to come,
Sure.
right? And really thinking about AI as a growth strategy, not necessarily just a cost cutting story for
Yeah.
these partner firms today. So that's kind of where it's working. Questions on that before we go to where it's burn cycles?
Well,
Well, let me
I have
just
a question
clarify
for
for those.
Corey. Or go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
let me clarify for Ops Army, right? Operation, all the people in the back end doing operations. And I think
Back
that's where
office.
you see so many in industry wide, every industry I talk to, it's like basically who's your operations people and how do I cut them, right? And, you growing into growth firms that are probably running pretty lean already. So you don't even have that. So AI is about
Correct.
totally new activity, not
Yeah.
about cost cutting. So it's really different because so many other industries it's entering is a cost cutting mode. And you can actually
Yeah.
see it accelerating the good part of what they should do, spending time with the client as opposed to, taking
Yeah.
time out so we can cut costs. Big
Right.
difference in how it's being applied in industry.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I love any use case that starts with, deploying AI to
Me
make
too.
room for more human to human
Yeah.
connection and interaction. And that's what we're seeing with, the meeting wrapper and AI use cases around
Mhm.
wealth management. On the cases that are still being worked out and fleshed out around, say, like investment, that reminds me of where we're at on engineers, right? The subject matter expert in a software engineer is magnified by using AI enabled coding tools in a way that a junior engineer or a layperson's not. Yes, you hear about non engineer vibe coding a prototype, but the actual like architectural software engineer, of course, rolling his eyes, rubbing his face.
Yeah, it's scary.
The actual engineer
Scares you.
magnified by AI, like that's really where the impact is at. So, on like an investment professional, to be able to use evolving tools to assist in the research and the due diligence they're doing, like that's an exciting use case. So my question, Corey, to turn it over to you, across other sectors too, like what are some of the themes, building on what Morgan said, you're seeing across other sectors where the subject matter expert, if you can put them in the right AR harness, is getting the 5x, 10x lift?
I actually had a conversation with sales reps at a company recently, and what they were doing is they had a person on staff that was asking them day to day about their job. And what do you do? Oh,
Yeah.
my meeting prep looks like this. Oh, my meeting, I do that. Oh, post meeting, I do this. Oh, here's how my meeting notes work. And then they were just
Mm.
building agents to automate that, automate this, make it. Wait, these three fit together. Now, how many just strap these agents together so it's one? And that
Mhm.
level of automation. I mean, I really believe the AI impact is coming from the bottoms up, not the top down. It might be a top
Yeah.
down mandate, but the actual impact is going to be felt bottoms up. And it's just and that's where I see universally people talk about using AI in software development. It only works if you have the individual developer who's talented enough to know how to read the output of the AI and
Right.
determine if that is valid output and it's actual code we can use. Right. So it's very much bottoms up individual task. How can AI impact an individual task? The robots aren't here and ready to take over yet. So, that's where the
Despite what
success
some
is.
believe.
Or the valuation, despite the valuation that we're going to be seeing on SpaceX here, right? The robots are not yet or have not yet arrived.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's ultimately the case too, for you'll hear narratives out there of all these service professionals are going to be displaced by the robots.
Yeah.
But yeah, who's checking the output? Wouldn't you rather have an AI augmented, financial advisor who then has the expertise to check, whatever AI assisted outputs there are? So And we don't need to go too deep down that. But in enabling those investment professionals, Morgan, let me ask you this: model context protocol is obviously a big buzzword, but it also has actionable I think implications to that system of action. So yeah, that's an interesting trend. I don't know if Corey, you've got thoughts across different industries on that too.
I mean, tons, but I was actually going to ask more about MCPs, right? Basically, you talked
Mhm.
earlier about structured data. How much is that helping integrate products or get the actions that you were talking about moving
Yeah.
quicker? Are you seeing a lot of use of MCP capability or integration capability?
Firms that have their data house in order are at a point where they can have that conversation.
Yep.
The firms that do not aren't there yet. And that
Yeah.
tells you
It's that
everything
simple.
that
Yeah,
you
it's that
need to
simple.
know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those that haven't worked with it, MCP is basically effectively putting an interface on top of your data to be shared interface with other products. It's become almost the application program interface, the API interface for AI tools to talk to one another. And yeah, if I can't describe my data to you or to myself, how can I describe it to you, right? So if my data isn't all set up right, it's almost that simple.
Yeah.
And Mike, to that point, I'm seeing MCPs everywhere. Everybody's got an
Yep.
MCP. I'm not seeing a ton of productive MCPs.
Oh, interesting.
That's the question, right? So
Yeah,
every
I don't
software
know. I kind of push back on that. Let's just unpack for a second. So
yeah,
I don't know what the examples are exactly, but I'll just Salesforce as an interface
Yeah.
is not my favorite, or I think any sales team's favorite. So I'm seeing
right.
a lot of wanting to live out of Claude's interface and
So you're
just
saying
MCP into the
the command
Salesforce.
line interface is the new graphical user interface. I would rather be at a command line than go into the user interface of the product because it's so bad.
I mean, there's a smoothness, right, to chatting with what can feel like a virtual human of an LLM.
Yep.
And so the friction on that, the key word on MCP is context. We've all spent the time of in the early ChatGPT days, type up the long paragraphs to explain your scenario
Yeah.
to it. And so if the context of a given data set, such as my CRM with Salesforce is already in there, and I can say I used to spend every Friday in RevOps meetings. Corey knows this for a decade as we scaled the
Yeah.
company. And you're constantly going back and forth in this manual process of sales managers want to see the charts in a certain way. I, as CEO, want to see them in a certain way. Well, now I have RevOps in my pocket because there's an
Yeah.
MCP server that connects Claude to Salesforce. So that to me is where I think there's tremendous gains. Now get to the specific workflow, and there's a debate to be had which is happening in wealth tech of where it should be MCP versus something that's a bit more hard coded as a vertically integrated workflow. So that's a different debate, but I just think the idea of having the context there
Yeah.
of the information I want my LLM sidekick to know, that's an amazing thing.
It is, but I think you just identified exactly the point that what I'm seeing, and that is just having an MCP to make data available doesn't automate my tasks, doesn't
Right.
make me more productive. I have to know how to use that data still. I have to know what I want to integrate that data with, and I have to build automation. Just having
Yep.
access to the data in Salesforce automates nothing about my sales process, right?
Yep.
It
Totally
just
fair.
gives me
Yep.
access to do so. So that's the problem where I'm seeing MCPs everywhere, but someone's got to sit down and go, oh, how do I use this? Oh, what do I ask it?
Yep.
Oh, wait, is this a report I couldn't get before? Right? It's stuff like that. So there's it's laying groundwork. It's almost like, Morgan, to
Yes.
your point,
Yeah.
you're getting the data ready. Now I can prove to others my data is ready. Now what can I do with
Yeah.
it? Right?
Yeah.
So that's where
And
we're at the what else can I do with it stage.
Corey, you hit on a really important point that we've been talking about a good bit with our partner firms in a time where so much is changing with technology, right? And there's so much new. There's still so much that doesn't change in terms of technology
Right.
implementation, and that's the change management piece. And you were just alluding to it, right? You still have to train people
Yeah.
on how to use these systems. And
Totally.
I think,
What's your job? You
Mike,
still got to know. Yeah.
yeah. Mike, it goes back to your point of like, what's the best technology going to be? And it's going to be which one is important for your business and why. And you still have to have that conversation. And training and adoption is more important than ever. And how are you sharing these use cases across your organization? And so, as many things are changing, so many aren't in terms of
Right.
technology adoption and implementation. And we really do try to go back to basics where we can with these firms of you've done this before, you've successfully rolled out technology.
Yeah.
Where can we borrow what you've learned from that to deploy it on a much broader scale for technology that's changing much more quickly? But I think so often people get excited about the new tool and they forget about the change management
Right.
piece that
Yeah.
is critical.
Someone the other day told me that they thought AI was no longer a technology problem; it was a change management problem,
I think
and I
so.
think it makes it
Yeah.
total sense. So as you look out, and you're seeing new companies all the time. You're whether you're have acquired them or you're doing due diligence, or sorry, taking a minority position or doing due
Yeah.
diligence. What do you think it's going to look like in the future? So 2-3 years from
Yeah.
now, I know it's changing fast. What does the tech profile of the top companies
Yeah.
in the RA space look like?
Yeah. I think the unrecognizable part won't actually be the tech stack. I think it will be the operating model that the tech will now enable. And
Interesting.
so, what we're encouraging the forward thinking firms that are equipped to have these conversations to ask is what's possible now that you have these tools and you have the foundations in place? What are you able to do that you've wanted to do for a long
Yeah.
time? That goes back to a lot of similar conversations when we're evaluating any technology, right? Of what do you want this to empower your business to do? What are the most important decisions that you're making? How are your people spending their time? And then looking at that through the lens of AI. And some of that will be product, right? I'm sure there are great solutions that we couldn't
Sure.
even dream of existing today that will exist in 12 months' time. And so we're certainly keeping our eyes and ears to the ground in terms of what's coming. But I think the top firms are really going to be the ones that are willing to lean in and think differently around how they can use AI as a growth strategy and
Mhm.
not just that cost cutting strategy. But more importantly, what is this operating model that where we're headed will enable?
So
Sure.
it's rethinking your processes, rethinking how you do your job, and I assume it's rethinking how you deliver service to your customers in a more customer friendly, efficient
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fun part of what can we do now that we weren't able to do before,
Yeah.
that's like the new unlock. So let me ask you this, given the ever evolving nature of where, AI and the tech is at, if you have a firm who's evaluating, say, like a major tech type investment,
Hmm.
is there some sort of framework, that you find works to help guide them through, given, the changes coming? And, how do you balance short-term disruption against long-term efficiency gains in
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Technology disruption and changing of systems is very real. In all honesty, my first recommendation is typically let's understand why what you have is not working today. Is it actually a system issue or is it a user issue? And
Mm.
Right.
more,
Very
more
common,
often
very
than
common.
not,
Yeah.
you can get 80% of the way there in terms of what you need to do by solving the user issue without all of the upheaval of replacing a
Yes.
technology. And at times it is the right decision, right? And so when we're having these conversations with our partner firms, we always start with the why, right? Why is this important to the business? What will a lot of what we were just talking about, what will this unlock? Not
Right.
we need this new platform. It's we want to see X percentage of organic growth over the next year. What do we need to have in place to track that, to measure that, to empower that? What's the bottleneck to the process today? So, really starting at ground zero, not starting with the technology choice, right? Because
Right.
there are so many new technologies and so many new vendors and so many new exciting things coming every day that people want to start there with the evaluating of the
Yep.
platform, but you
Yeah.
really have to start with the business
You mean
case.
the hard part? What do I want to get done? What are my goals? You mean there? Oh.
Yeah. So they don't always love when
Yeah.
we start there, right? Because they bring us a new technology and they're like, look what I found. And I'm like, great. Why do you want to use that? And it's like,
Yeah.
well,
Right.
the CEO met so and so at a conference. I'm like, this is the worst. This is the worst start for a technology
Oh,
evaluation.
oh
But
no.
to get back to your question, Mike, starting with the why and the business
Okay.
outcome, walking them through organizational readiness. Are you guys at a point where you're ready and willing to make this change? Who's
Right.
going to own it? Are you doing it internally? Are you bringing someone in to help support it from a third party perspective? That's where people start to miss the mark. Then
Right.
we get to the technology choice of what's out there, what could fit the need for what you're looking to do. And then finally, we look at cost. It's an important factor. It shouldn't be the deciding factor, but there is a real cost to the opportunity cost of doing this now versus later.
Right.
But as we know, there's always a J curve to technology. Every investment has one, but technology specifically. But my gut is that the biggest predictor isn't the platform, it's how the firm uses it. And that will be the same problem today or with a new system, should you choose to implement. But we start at the beginning and walk them through the whole process. And
Yeah.
ultimately, the decision's theirs, right? And being a
Yeah.
minority investor, but hopefully we can help guide them the right direction.
Yeah, and you bring a lot of domain expertise and pattern matching, right? We see other companies do this. Here's what you can learn from.
Exactly. We have 14 other wealth management firms, 3 of which are doing this same service offering. They use X, Y, and Z. If you
Yeah.
really talk to them, right? A lot
Yeah,
of it
yeah.
is like, why don't we connect you with them and you guys can have a conversation? Sometimes you're an N of one at one of these
Right.
from a big picture, smaller firm. And so who else is using this in the space? And that's definitely some of the value that we can provide is bringing together people on a functional role perspective to have those conversations.
Everybody always wants to know what others in their industry are doing or their competitors are doing, right? And so you're
Yeah.
actually bringing that insight to these companies, and it'll be so interesting as AI unfolds. And to your point, I feel like shiny new toys are put in front of people almost on a daily basis. It'll be curious to see how this plays out and levels out where people stop looking at the toy and start asking questions when they make the change to
Right.
what do I want to change? Oh, what do I want to approve? Not how cool is this, right? So I'm curious if we talk in a year, will it have happened yet, right? Or
Right.
so
Yeah, I think Corey, this is one of those we have to, have 6 months from now check in with Morgan and say, okay, here's what we
Yeah.
what's
talked about six
changing?
months ago. Let's see what's evolved and changed. And I do think the theme of the CFO's seat at the AI decision making table is becoming
Very
more
real.
and more prominent as it should be. I think there was a period of time where the primary metric, I would say, driving a lot
Wrong.
of AI activity was the keeping up with the Joneses metric, as I kind of put it,
Yeah.
of all the shiny new stuff and we need to be up with the news and all that. And I think now it's getting to the tangible questions that you're asking of
Yeah.
what are you trying to achieve, AI or not? Can it be achieved with the current tech stack? What is the ROI? And we're not even touching tokenomics, which might be a conversation we have down the line too.
That's a
But
whole that's 6
there's
more
all of that
episodes.
going
Yeah,
on right now.
exactly.
We can't even touch that right now. But well, Morgan Bell, this was a joy. Thank you for joining us. Anything to share of where folks could find more information about you or Constellation Wealth Capital?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is constellationwealthcapital.com. You can find us and myself on LinkedIn and always feel free to reach out. Thanks for having me,
Great.
Mike and Corey.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining.